So Richard's question is about using the trade fit option here. So he is using, for example, a 1% of the account. So let's, I guess, to make the number of contracts larger here, I'm going to put in $100,000 account. That way we're dealing with $1,000, trade fit here. So, all right, so that's step one, is enable the trade fit, or, which is the risk per trade. Enable that. And then step two is, let me just create some market entries here. All right. So Richard's using 2 positions. So there we go. So we got, 2 positions here. And so, we need a stop loss. So in order to calculate a risk, so a risk needs to be known. So you need a stop loss to cap your risk. And so once the maximum risk is realized, then the number of contracts can be scaled up or down to match that maximum risk. So let's create just a simple 10-tick stop loss there. And click OK. So what I'm going to do is, in the middle menu here, we have this risk reward menu item here, right? And it's going to tell you the quantity of contracts, the reward, and the risk. So we are interested in the risk here, risk amount. And then also, to help visualize this, I'm going to use the dynamic planner. So let's see, with the dynamic planner, let's plan long. Actually, hold on. I'm going to make an adjustment here. So instead of using a market entry, because we can't see the trade flags for the market entries, because there is no flag, it just gets filled instantly. So I'm going to switch my entry orders over to a limit order. And there we go. Okay, so now with the dynamic planner, if I plan a long trade, there, at least now we have a visual of where the entry order is relative to the stop loss. There. All right. So we can see here we have, let's see, we have 2 contracts and a risk of $100 with 2 contracts, based on this offset distance here. And let's see, I'm on the NQ, so you know what, it's going to be easier to do the math if I switch over to the oil contract. Yeah, the oil is so much easier to calculate the math in your head, because 1 penny is 1 penny. All right, so let's do this again here. There. All right. And I am not, let's see, I must have missed something here. Let's see, what did I miss? Well, eventually we're going to talk about this quantity scaling here. So, Richard, really your question is getting at adjusting the quantity scaling here. So that's why I'm looking at this menu item here. But also, I'm first trying to see what, well, let's see, what did I'm missing something here, because the number of contracts was not scaling up or down. unless my math is wrong. Yeah, let me just put this on fixed amount instead, and let's put $1,000, risk per trade on a fixed amount, and let's test that. Oh, gee whiz. Sorry, guys. Obvious mistake here. I did not enable the scale to fit button there. So with the dynamic planner, you need to turn on the scale to fit to enable the contract scaling. So now we can see that it's 10 contracts there. There we go. So yeah, I knew I missed something there. So let me switch this back to percentage of account there. All right. There. Okay. So with the scale to fit enabled on the dynamic planner, I can see the number of contracts that will be submitted, right, to meet my maximum risk of 1% of a $100,000 account. Right? Now, if I move my stop losses out, we can see the quantity is reduced down to 5, right? And let's see. Yeah, the risk. There we go. The risk is $1,000 now. And so the question is, right? I have two order sets here. So how do you control how many contracts go into each? And we can't. Yeah, shoot, we can't. The flags are, the stop losses are stacked on top of each other, so we can't actually see the number of contracts for each order set. So to fix that, let's just add a profit target. There. All right. So at least with profit targets having separated flags, we can now see the number of contracts, right, for each order set. So again, if I move my stop losses out and that increases the risk, we want to keep that risk at $1,000, right? 1% of a $100,000 account. So the distance of my entry to my stop losses, 5 contracts can be submitted, right? And we can see here that 3 contracts are going into order set B and 2 contracts are going into order set A. And so Richard's question is about how can I manually control these number of contracts? Well, no, you can't do it manually, because otherwise you're not, because if you do it manually, then most likely you're going to be overshooting your risk, right? So the whole purpose of the scale to fit, the trade fit mechanism is to allow BlackBird to do that for you manually, or automatically. Sorry, to allow BlackBird to do that for you automatically. So, but what you can do, so you can't manually say, hey, I want 1 contract in B and I want 4 contracts in A. So you can't do that manually. But what you can do is you can describe to BlackBird which order set you prefer to have the most contracts in. And so to do that, you open up this menu here, which I'm trying to remember what that's called. What is this menu called here? Here, let's do this. Let's go to the documentation. Find out what that menu is called here. All right, so here's the BlackBird menu stuff, and so that is a part of the order sets. There we go. Let's go to the order sets. Yeah, the order sets menu. There we go. the order management options. There we go. Makes sense. All right. So here you go. This is the menu that we're talking about, the order management options here. Yeah, when you click this down triangle, right, this menu button here, right, it pops out this order management option here. So there we go. That's what we're interested in. And there you go. So there's a written description of what allow upscaling does versus downscaling, and the ratio quantity. So there we go. All right. So we're going to go into our order management menu here, and you can see there's allow upscaling, and so this creates a constraint, right? So this will allow a maximum of 11 contracts to be added to order set A, right? So even though you may have told BlackBird, okay, I'm willing to risk $10,000 per trade, you can still say, well, regardless of what my risk amount is, I still only want a maximum number of contracts to be traded ever at one time. And so we can go in here, and if I knock this down to 4, then the maximum number of contracts that would be allowed for order set A is 5 contracts here. All right. So let's enable that. And there's a downscaling option as well. Right, so let's say, for example, you intend to trade, like the standard is that you want 4 contracts for A and, maybe 2 contracts for B, right? So you want to, so you have a starting point, kind of a standard trade of 4 and 2. Well, then you could also adjust the downscaling. So you could, right, so we can see the downscaling would allow BlackBird to reduce the number of contracts down to 0. So 0 for order A. So maybe you at least want 2 contracts, right? So if I adjust the acceptable variance down to 2, then it takes 4 contracts and is allowed to downscale by 2 contracts. So you can see the number of contracts for A can go from 4 down to 2 maximum. So there's at least a minimum of 2 contracts in A, no matter what. Now, what you are really interested in Dean, or Richard, what you're really interested in is this quantity ratio here. So let me knock this down to 1 and 1. And so with this quantity ratio, you can adjust whether BlackBird is to keep this ratio more exact, or is BlackBird given more flexibility to increase the number of contracts or decrease the number of contracts, right? So if you want the majority of contracts to go into A, then you can increase this slider all the way over to the right to make it more flexible, right? So you're giving BlackBird more flexibility to increase or decrease the number of contracts for A. Right, and actually, I'm going to go in here and there, do something like that. There. All right, so what I've got now is I'm allowing BlackBird to increase the number of contracts all the way up to 20, but it has to keep at least 1 contract in order A. So the downscaling, basically I disabled the downscaling. It's allowed to go from 1 to 1. So if I wanted to, I could just simply turn off the downscaling. Since my starting point is at 1 contract, I guess there's no there's no point in enabling downscaling if I don't want it to go down to 0, right? So if I want to keep at least a minimum 1 contract, then I should just turn the downscaling off. And then in the ratio quantity here, yeah, so if you want order A to be adjusted up and down, to scale the number of contracts up and down first, then set this ratio all the way over to flexible. And so, yeah. And then for B, we can probably just keep B at balanced, right there at balanced. Let's see. Yeah, here, just a little side note. So if you only have two order sets here, then the order set that you want to kind of minimize the upscaling and downscaling of your number of contracts, you can leave one of these ratio sliders at balance and just adjust the other one. So really, the only time you'd really need to move the slider down to keeping the number of contracts more exact is if you're working with 3 or more order sets, right? 3 or more different profit targets. That is when you'd probably, move the slider to the left over to the exact. So otherwise, you can just keep it in its default position here of balanced. So, all right, so with those adjustments, all right, so again, order A or order set A, we set this to flexible. And so now if we take a look, let's do this again. So if I increase my risk, we can see, let's see here, yeah, there we go. So I'll just move my stop loss up a little bit. We can see order A has 3 contracts and order B has 2 contracts. And the risk is $910 there, $920. So we're almost at our maximum risk. So if I move this down a couple ticks, yeah, there we go. So now the number of contracts is balanced at 2 and 2, and our risk is at $1,000 exactly. So, and if I increase this a little more, then we can see, right, order B was knocked down to 1 contract and A was set to 2 contracts. And our risk is $780, right, with this stop loss location. Okay. Now, there we go. So if I really tighten up my stop loss, right, now we're going to do 16 contracts. And if we look, well, B is at 1 and A absorbed all of those contracts, right, of 15 versus 1. So to adjust that, probably, so if you want a few more contracts to go into B, then we can go into the quantity ratio and just put this in the middle, right? So just above balance, in between balanced and flexible, we can do that. And then also let me make sure, yeah, so for B, we're allowing it to scale up to 11 contracts. Yeah, all right. So let's click OK. Let's go reset this. There we go. So it's still a little more balanced here, 7 and 7. Let's see, 8 and 8. And there we go. So now we have 2 and 1. 2 and 1. And there we go. So now we have 5 and 4. Now we have 6 and 5. Let's see, 7 and 7, but our risk is at $920. Let's see, 8 and 8. We're at $1,000 exactly. Yeah, so what BlackBird is trying to do is maximize the number of contracts and at the same time get the risk as close to $1,000 as possible. Let's see if I can, I'm going to try and adjust the ratio here so that when the stop loss is a lot tighter and the number of contracts really increase, I'm going to try and set it up so that a few more contracts go into A. Yeah, a few more contracts hopefully will go into A and a few less into B. And so to do that, I'm going to take this slider and actually knock it down 1. Yeah, knock it down 1 and see what that does. Let's see. Oh, we still have 8 and 8, but our risk is at 960. Yeah. And there we go. So now we have 14 and 11. Yeah, 14 and 11. So there we go. So now we can see BlackBird's able to skew more contracts into order set A and a little less into order set B. And there we go. So we have 3 and 2 now. And let's see, yeah, 2 and 2. There we go. 2 and 1. So now I have 2 contracts versus 1 contract. And then let's see, 8 and 8. 10 and 10. Let's see. Yeah, our risk is at 1,080. There we go. All right, cool. So we can see it just did a recalculation there. All right. There we go. All right, good. So now it's 14 and 11 for a total of 25 contracts. That's a lot. All right there, Richard. So using the order management and the quantity scaling menu here is how you can kind of control, instruct BlackBird, how you want to balance the number of contracts out. So let's see. Yeah. So Rick is asking, can you have all the contracts go into position A if there's not enough money to use both? Well, yeah, that's exactly what BlackBird is evaluating. And it will do that precisely. Yeah. So if, for example, here, let's stretch this way out. All right, so we're at 2 contracts now. There we go. Now we're at 1 contract. There. So we can see A is going to take 1 contract. B will be left with 0 contracts. So, all right. Looks like that does it for Richard's question.